The internet thought they could flip the entire Johnny Depp conversation overnight. One trending hashtag, a few viral edits, and suddenly Amber Heard's name was everywhere again. But what happened next completely changed the direction of the story. Instead of rebuilding support for Amber, the trend triggered a massive wave of people revisiting old court footage, old testimony, and old interviews connected to the Depp-Heard case. Within hours, clips from the 2022 Virginia trial started circulating again across TikTok, X, YouTube, and Reddit. People weren't just reacting emotionally this time. They were rewatching details, analyzing statements, comparing testimony with recorded audio and documented evidence shown publicly in court. And the more the conversation spread, the stronger Johnny Depp's online support became again. Even creators who stayed silent during the original trial suddenly started talking about why the backlash against Depp never matched the public evidence presented in court. What was supposed to become a comeback trend for Amber Heard unexpectedly turned into another major surge of support for Johnny Depp, and some people online think the reason behind that says everything. For a while, it looked like the internet was preparing for a complete narrative shift. Posts defending Amber Heard began gaining traction again. Certain viral accounts pushed old headlines back into circulation, and clips designed to question Johnny Depp's image started appearing across multiple platforms almost at the same time. Some users even claimed this was finally the moment public opinion would completely reverse. But instead of people blindly accepting the trend, something unexpected happened. Millions of users started revisiting the original source material for themselves, and that changed everything. One of the biggest reasons the trend backfired was because the Depp-Heard trial was one of the most publicly documented celebrity court cases in recent history. Unlike internet drama built only on rumors, this case included recorded audio, full courtroom live streams, witness testimony, legal documents, expert analysis, and hours of cross-examination that remained available online long after the verdict. So when new social media posts attempted to reshape the narrative, many viewers didn't rely on edited clips anymore. They went back and watched the full context. Suddenly, old courtroom moments involving Amber Heard's testimony started circulating again. Clips from cross-examinations gained millions of views once more, especially moments where inconsistencies were questioned by attorneys during the Virginia defamation trial in 2022. Viewers also began reposting sections of audio recordings previously introduced in court. One particular recording that had already become widely discussed online years earlier resurfaced heavily during the trend resurgence. Many users claimed those recordings played a major role in why public opinion originally shifted toward Johnny Depp in the first place. As reactions exploded online again, another detail became impossible to ignore. People noticed that support for Johnny Depp wasn't only coming from longtime fans anymore. Many casual viewers who originally avoided taking sides during the trial were now openly saying they understood why the public reacted the way it did in 2022 after revisiting the available court footage themselves. That changed the tone of the conversation completely because it no longer looked like a temporary fandom defense. It looked like millions of people independently reaching similar conclusions after reviewing public evidence again. YouTube creators also started covering the situation heavily. Commentary channels revisited legal breakdowns from the original case while compiling clips directly from the televised proceedings. Several creators pointed out that attempts to restart support campaigns for Amber Heard often ended up bringing renewed attention back to moments that damaged her credibility during the trial itself. Some analysts argued that the internet environment had changed since 2022 because audiences had become more skeptical of viral narratives built from short clips without context. Another major factor involved the original verdict itself. In June 2022, the Virginia jury found that Amber Heard had defamed Johnny Depp through statements connected to a Washington Post op-ed. The jury awarded compensatory and punitive damages to Depp while also awarding Heard damages connected to one statement made by Depp's former lawyer. Those legal outcomes became central to the renewed online debate because many supporters argued the public discussion often ignored the actual court ruling while focusing only on emotional reactions online. As the trend kept spreading, older interviews featuring Johnny Depp also resurfaced. Clips from before the trial showed him discussing how seriously he took the accusations against him and how much damage he believed had already been done to his career and reputation. People began comparing those interviews with the timeline surrounding his removal from major Hollywood projects. One of the most discussed examples involved his exit from the Fantastic Beasts franchise after losing a UK libel case against the Sun newspaper in 2020. Despite that earlier loss in the UK, many supporters believe the later Virginia trial gave the public a much broader look at evidence and testimony because it was fully televised. That difference mattered online. Countless users said the ability to actually watch witnesses testify in real time affected how they viewed the case. Instead of relying on media summaries, audiences felt they could personally evaluate reactions, timelines, and testimony themselves. Legal analysts on social media repeatedly pointed out how unusual that level of public access was for a celebrity defamation case. And once those clips started trending again during the attempted Amber Heard resurgence, many people claimed the same footage that once fueled Depp's public support was now doing it all over again. Then came another turning point. Users began comparing engagement numbers between pro-Amber content and pro-Depp content during the renewed trend cycle. Despite hashtags attempting to push support for Heard, videos defending Johnny Depp often received significantly larger interaction numbers. Some posts analyzing courtroom testimony crossed millions of views within days. Compilation clips from the trial surged again on YouTube and TikTok rankings. Even older memes connected to Depp's courtroom moments started resurfacing across social platforms. But behind the memes and viral clips, another conversation started gaining momentum. People began debating whether the internet had underestimated how strongly audiences connected with Johnny Depp during the original trial. Supporters argued that many viewers saw him not just as a celebrity defending himself, but as someone publicly fighting accusations while risking further damage to his already declining career. Whether people agreed with that perspective or not, it clearly remained powerful online years later. Some creators also pointed toward the emotional reaction visible outside the courthouse during the trial itself. Footage of crowds gathering daily in Fairfax County circulated again online as users discussed how unusual the level of public attention had become. For many observers, the trial felt bigger than celebrity gossip. It became part of a wider cultural conversation about media narratives, public perception, and evidence versus online activism. At the same time, critics of the renewed Amber Heard trend argued that certain viral posts ignored important courtroom details altogether. Users began fact-checking clips in real time, reposting longer versions of interviews and testimony to challenge misleading edits. This created a situation where attempts to simplify the case into short viral talking points often collapsed once viewers demanded full context. And the more people revisited that context, the more the online momentum appeared to swing back toward Johnny Depp again. Even mainstream media outlets noticed the shift happening online. Reports covering the resurgence mentioned how quickly social media discussions reignited around the original trial footage. Analysts described the renewed public fascination as proof that the Depp-Heard case never truly disappeared from internet culture. Instead, it remained one of the most emotionally debated celebrity legal battles of the modern social media era. Then another detail started attracting attention. Some users noticed that every major attempt to relaunch the conversation in Amber Heard's favor seemed to unintentionally trigger a larger wave of Depp support almost immediately afterward. Supporters called it the Streisand effect in action. The harder people pushed selective narratives, the more audiences returned to original court evidence that complicated those narratives. And once viewers returned to the material, the momentum often shifted back toward Depp again. By that point, even people who were tired of hearing about the trial admitted one thing: the internet still had not moved on from the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. And the latest trend proved it in a massive way because instead of rewriting history, it reopened one of the most analyzed celebrity court battles the internet had ever seen. What made the situation even more surprising was how quickly the renewed online conversation stopped being about simple celebrity gossip and turned back into detailed discussions about evidence, timelines, witness credibility, and media framing. People across social platforms began reposting side-by-side comparisons of headlines from 2022 alongside actual courtroom footage, arguing that many early reports about the case felt completely different once audiences watched the trial themselves instead of relying on summaries. Some users admitted openly that they originally believed the accusations against Johnny Depp years earlier because of the media environment surrounding the story at the time, but changed their minds after seeing the full televised proceedings during the Virginia trial. That admission alone became a huge talking point because it reflected something much bigger happening online. Audiences were no longer automatically trusting short viral narratives without checking the source material themselves. And once the Amber Heard trend started pulling attention back toward the case again, millions of people returned to those source materials almost instantly. Clips involving testimony from witnesses like bodyguards, former employees, entertainment industry figures, and medical experts started circulating again. Users debated timelines late into the night across Reddit threads, YouTube live streams, and TikTok comment sections. Some viewers focused heavily on the audio recordings played during the trial, while others focused on cross-examination moments that had originally gone viral worldwide. Regardless of where people stood emotionally, one thing became obvious very quickly. The more public attention returned to the actual courtroom footage, the stronger Johnny Depp's online support appeared to become again. That created a massive problem for accounts trying to completely reverse public opinion because the internet already had years of archived footage, transcripts, interviews, and legal analysis sitting publicly available for anyone willing to look. People did not need to rely only on influencers anymore. They could compare claims against publicly documented testimony themselves. And many users did exactly that. Another reason the trend struggled involved the emotional connection many fans still had with Johnny Depp's career itself. For decades, Depp built one of Hollywood's most recognizable filmographies through projects like Pirates of the Caribbean, Edward Scissorhands, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Sleep Hollow, Donnie Brasco, and Finding Neverland. To millions of viewers, he was not just another celebrity attached to a controversy. He was a major part of pop culture history going back generations. Fans who grew up watching his films felt personally invested in seeing him defend his reputation publicly after years of negative headlines. During the original trial, supporters constantly argued that Depp had already lost enormous professional opportunities before he ever had the chance to fully tell his side in court. So when online conversations suddenly attempted to frame him negatively again, many longtime fans immediately pushed back harder than before. They reposted interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, charitable stories, and older clips showing Depp interacting warmly with fans and hospital patients over the years. Videos of him visiting children's hospitals dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow resurfaced again and spread widely online. Supporters used those moments to argue that the public image many fans connected with over decades did not align with the darker narratives sometimes presented online. Meanwhile, another complicated issue started dividing social media users even further. Some people argued that public opinion around the trial had become too emotionally charged overall, while others insisted audiences had every right to form strong reactions after watching weeks of testimony unfold live. This debate became especially intense because the Depp Heard case existed at the intersection of celebrity culture, legal proceedings, media influence, internet activism, and public trust. Unlike traditional court cases that fade quietly after verdicts, this one became permanently embedded into online culture through clips, memes, live streams, commentary videos, and endless discussions archived across every major platform. And because of that, every attempt to revive the conversation also revived the same evidence, the same testimony, and the same public reactions attached to it. Some legal commentators revisiting the case pointed out how unusual it was for ordinary viewers to become so familiar with courtroom procedures, witness testimony structure, and cross-examination techniques during the original trial. Millions of people who had never watched a defamation case before suddenly became deeply invested in legal arguments about credibility, evidence admissibility, and conflicting testimony. When the latest Amber Heard trend emerged, many of those same viewers returned with even more knowledge than before. They remembered details. They remembered timelines. They remembered specific moments from witness testimony. That made it harder for simplified viral narratives to dominate the discussion without immediate pushback from people citing actual courtroom footage. Another major reason the trend backfired involved social media algorithms themselves. Controversy drives engagement, but contradiction drives even more. Every time a viral post attempted to criticize Johnny Depp, thousands of users responded with clips, documents, audio recordings, or testimony excerpts challenging the claims. Those responses generated even more engagement than the original posts in many cases. Reaction videos exploded again. Live stream debates returned. Commentary creators who had not discussed the case in years suddenly uploaded multiple videos analyzing why public opinion still leaned so heavily toward Depp despite renewed campaigns defending Heard. Some creators even argued that attempts to aggressively shame Depp supporters online only strengthened their loyalty because many fans felt dismissed or insulted for drawing conclusions based on publicly available evidence. Then there was the issue of authenticity. Internet audiences today are extremely sensitive to coordinated messaging. Many users began accusing certain viral trends of feeling artificial or overly organized. Hashtags pushing strongly pro-Amber narratives sometimes triggered skepticism because users noticed identical talking points appearing repeatedly across different accounts. Whether those accusations were fair or not, the perception itself damaged momentum for some campaigns. People increasingly questioned whether organic public opinion was actually shifting or whether online amplification was creating an illusion of momentum. Meanwhile, pro-Depp reactions often appeared more chaotic, emotional, and decentralized, which ironically made them feel more genuine to many viewers online. Another layer of the conversation involved the long-term career consequences surrounding the case. Supporters repeatedly pointed out that Johnny Depp experienced major professional fallout after allegations against him became public years earlier. Discussions about lost roles resurfaced constantly during the renewed trend cycle. People revisited headlines surrounding his departure from Pirates of the Caribbean and Fantastic Beasts while debating whether Hollywood treated him unfairly before the Virginia trial ever happened. Some fans argued that regardless of legal outcomes, the reputational damage had already permanently changed the trajectory of his career. Others countered that public controversies naturally affect major celebrities. But either way, the emotional investment from fans remained extremely strong because many believed they watched one of Hollywood's biggest stars lose opportunities in real time while accusations dominated headlines globally. Then came another major development in the online discussion. Users started comparing mainstream media coverage from the early stages of the controversy against coverage that appeared after the trial verdict. Many viewers argued there was a dramatic shift in tone over time. Some claimed early reporting leaned heavily against Depp before the televised proceedings complicated public perception. Others disagreed completely. But the debate itself fueled even more engagement because people were no longer only arguing about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. They were arguing about journalism, bias, internet influence, celebrity culture, and the relationship between media narratives and public opinion. Countless reaction channels began breaking down old headlines frame by frame while comparing them to testimony introduced later in court. And every time those comparisons went viral, support for Depp seemed to surge all over again. At the same time, Amber Heard continued to maintain supporters online as well. Some users argued that the internet environment surrounding the trial became unfairly hostile toward her during 2022 and that viral mockery crossed serious lines. Others believed criticism toward her testimony resulted directly from contradictions exposed publicly during the case. The internet remained deeply divided emotionally, but what surprised many analysts during the renewed trend cycle was how consistently public engagement appeared to favor Depp-focused content once courtroom footage re-entered the conversation. That pattern repeated over and over again. Viral anti-Depp posts triggered viral pro-Depp responses. Attempts to criticize his fanbase triggered even larger defenses from supporters. Older trial clips regained millions of views almost overnight. And through it all, one theme stayed constant. Audiences kept returning to the publicly available evidence instead of relying entirely on trending commentary. Some internet users even described the entire situation as one of the biggest examples of digital memory in modern celebrity culture. Unlike scandals from previous decades that faded after headlines disappeared, this case remained permanently searchable and endlessly replayable online. Anyone could watch full trial days on YouTube. Anyone could revisit testimony. Anyone could compare clips themselves. And because the information remained so accessible, controlling the narrative became almost impossible for either side. Every new trend automatically reopened years of archived material for the public to examine again. Supporters of Johnny Depp believed that dynamic benefited him because they felt the full context favored his position far more than selective clips ever could. Critics disagreed, but even they acknowledged how uniquely documented the entire case had become. Then another unexpected factor entered the conversation. Younger social media users who were too young to fully follow the original trial started discovering the case through newer viral clips. Many of them watched old testimony for the first time during the renewed trend cycle. Reaction videos from younger creators exploded in popularity as they revisited courtroom moments that older viewers remembered instantly. Some younger audiences admitted they expected the internet discussion around Depp to be exaggerated until they watched longer sections of testimony themselves. Others remained critical. But once again, the important detail was not universal agreement. It was the fact that people kept returning to the original footage instead of accepting simplified summaries. That pattern consistently disrupted attempts to fully reshape public perception in one direction. By now, even entertainment analysts covering celebrity culture noticed something unusual. Most public relations recoveries or backlash cycles eventually fade through silence and time. But the Depp Heard conversation operated differently because the internet treated it less like ordinary celebrity drama and more like an unresolved cultural event people continued debating years later. Every new trend reignited the same emotional intensity almost immediately. Every viral clip reopened old arguments. Every interview reference triggered new analysis videos. And because Johnny Depp remained such a globally recognized figure with decades of audience goodwill built before the controversy, support for him often returned extremely fast whenever attention shifted back toward the case. Another key detail people discussed heavily involved courtroom demeanor. During the original trial, countless clips of Depp reacting calmly, joking with attorneys, drawing sketches, or interacting with supporters outside court became massively viral. Fans argued those moments humanized him during an incredibly public legal battle. Critics argued internet culture turned serious proceedings into entertainment. But regardless of opinion, those viral courtroom clips became permanently attached to public memory surrounding the case. So when the latest trend attempted to change the conversation, audiences immediately remembered the images and moments that originally shaped their reactions years earlier. Some users even argued that the public felt emotionally exhausted by the endless attempts to relitigate the case online. They believed audiences had already spent years debating every possible angle and saw little reason to completely reverse their views after so much publicly available information already existed. Others welcomed renewed discussion, arguing controversial celebrity cases should continue being examined critically over time. But once again, the attempt to generate a major anti-Depp momentum shift appeared to produce the opposite effect overall. Engagement numbers surged around pro-Depp content. Old fan communities became active again. Creators revisited trial analysis. And Johnny Depp's supporters treated the backlash against the trend almost like proof that the public had not forgotten the original proceedings at all. By the end of the renewed viral cycle, one reality became impossible to ignore. The internet could still debate the Depp Heard case endlessly, but every attempt to dramatically rewrite the story seemed to reopen the same courtroom footage, the same testimony, the same legal outcomes, and the same emotional reactions that pushed millions of viewers toward Johnny Depp in the first place. As the online battle continued growing again, another interesting pattern started becoming impossible to ignore. Every time a major account tried presenting the renewed Amber Heard support movement as proof that the public had completely changed sides, thousands of users immediately flooded comment sections with direct references to the trial itself. Not rumors, not gossip, actual moments from court, clips of testimony, timestamps from live streams, links to full hearings, screenshots from legal filings. And the reaction revealed something huge about why the trend struggled to gain lasting momentum against Johnny Depp online. Audiences no longer felt disconnected from the case because millions of people had literally watched it unfold live for weeks in front of their own eyes. That created a completely different internet environment than most celebrity controversies. Usually, public opinion depends heavily on headlines and second-hand reporting. But this case became one of the first celebrity legal battles where average viewers consumed raw footage directly for hours every single day. People watched witnesses testify in real time. They watched cross-examinations without edits. They watched reactions inside the courtroom without narration shaping every moment for them. So years later, when attempts emerged to simplify the situation into quick viral narratives again, many viewers pushed back because they remembered far more detail than people expected. Some users even started posting comments saying things like, "We watched the trial ourselves," whenever debates about Depp resurfaced online. That phrase alone spread rapidly because it summarized why so many people resisted sudden narrative reversals. Another major reason support for Johnny Depp surged again involved the emotional tone surrounding his public appearances after the trial. Fans noticed that despite years of legal battles, damaged headlines, and career uncertainty, Depp appeared focused on rebuilding professionally rather than escalating online conflict himself. Clips from concerts with Jeff Beck before Beck's passing resurfaced again online, alongside footage of Depp attending film festivals, directing projects, and reconnecting with audiences internationally. Supporters argued those appearances reinforced the image of someone attempting to move forward after one of the most publicly dissected legal fights in entertainment history. Meanwhile, online critics who expected public sympathy toward Depp to fade over time were surprised by how loyal his fanbase remained globally. Fan edits, tribute videos, and support posts continued receiving enormous engagement years after the verdict. Even older interviews from the 1990s and early 2000s resurfaced during the renewed trend cycle, with fans highlighting moments where fellow actors and directors described Depp as kind, creative, private, or deeply committed to his work. Supporters believed those long-standing industry relationships mattered because they showed positive impressions of him existed long before the controversy exploded publicly. At the same time, internet discussions about Amber Heard often became far more complicated than simple support or criticism. Some users defended her strongly and argued that public mockery surrounding the trial went too far during 2022. Others insisted criticism focused specifically on contradictions they believed appeared during testimony. But regardless of where people stood emotionally, the biggest issue for the renewed trend remained the same. Every attempt to revive support for Heard also revived public examination of the trial evidence itself. And once audiences started revisiting that evidence, many returned to conclusions similar to the ones they reached originally. Legal commentators discussing the situation online pointed out that credibility became one of the defining themes of the Virginia proceedings. Because the trial centered around defamation claims connected to public allegations, witness consistency and evidence interpretation became central to how viewers processed the case emotionally. Millions of ordinary internet users suddenly spent weeks debating details normally discussed mainly by attorneys and legal analysts. That level of public involvement created unusually strong opinions on all sides, but it also meant people remembered specifics years later. Some remembered testimony from expert witnesses. Some remembered discussions about photographs and timelines. Some remembered audio recordings played repeatedly online after court sessions ended. And because those memories remained attached to actual footage publicly archived online, reshaping the conversation entirely became incredibly difficult. Then another major factor intensified support for Depp again. Many fans felt frustrated by what they viewed as repeated attempts to shame or insult people simply for supporting him after the trial. Across social media, users argued that dismissing millions of viewers as ignorant or manipulated only pushed them further into defending their position. Some commentators suggested this became one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by aggressive anti-Depp voices online. Instead of persuading undecided viewers, harsh attacks often triggered defensive reactions from audiences who genuinely believed they formed opinions based on publicly available testimony and evidence. In other words, the internet conflict stopped being only about celebrities. For many people, it became about whether ordinary viewers had the right to interpret publicly broadcast court proceedings for themselves without being mocked for their conclusions. That emotional dynamic strengthened Johnny Depp's support even further because many fans began viewing criticism toward him as criticism toward them as well. Another detail that fueled renewed interest involved the long-term cultural impact of the trial itself. Years after the verdict, clips from the proceedings still circulated regularly across platforms. Reaction memes remained recognizable. Famous courtroom exchanges stayed embedded in internet culture. Even people who never watched the full trial often recognized references connected to it because the case dominated online discussion so completely during 2022. When the latest Amber Heard trend emerged, it unintentionally reminded the internet just how massive the original event had been. Suddenly, people started revisiting old reaction compilations, legal analyses, and live stream highlights again. YouTube recommendation feeds filled with Depp Heard content almost overnight. Creators who previously moved on from the topic returned because engagement numbers exploded immediately once public interest reignited. Some videos reviewing old testimony gained millions of views within days. Commentary channels analyzed social media reactions in real time while comparing them to the original trial atmosphere from years earlier. And once again, most of the attention appeared to strengthen public support for Depp rather than weaken it. Some analysts believe nostalgia also played a role in the renewed surge. For many viewers, Johnny Depp represented a different era of Hollywood filmmaking before modern franchise culture dominated entertainment completely. Characters like Captain Jack Sparrow became deeply tied to childhood memories for entire generations. Supporters argued that emotional connection made audiences more willing to defend Depp aggressively once they believed he had been treated unfairly publicly. Critics viewed that fan loyalty differently, but even critics admitted his cultural impact as an actor remained enormous worldwide. And because that impact stretched across decades, online support for him existed far beyond ordinary celebrity fandom. Another important issue involved trust in media institutions overall. By the time the latest trend emerged, public skepticism toward online narratives had grown dramatically compared to earlier years. Audiences increasingly questioned viral campaigns, selective editing, emotionally charged headlines, and coordinated social media messaging. Many internet users actively searched for original footage before accepting major claims about controversial topics. That environment benefited Depp supporters because they consistently encouraged people to revisit the actual courtroom broadcasts rather than rely only on commentary. Whenever new accusations or viral clips spread online, responses immediately appeared saying, "Watch the full testimony," or "Look at the actual evidence presented in court." That strategy repeatedly redirected attention back toward the televised proceedings themselves, where many viewers believed Depp performed strongly in terms of public perception. Then there was the issue of humor and internet culture. During the original trial, countless memes and viral moments involving Depp spread across platforms daily. While some critics argued those memes trivialized serious allegations, supporters believed the humor reflected how audiences emotionally connected with Depp's courtroom demeanor and personality. Years later, those same viral moments resurfaced during the renewed trend cycle. Users reposted clips of courtroom exchanges, humorous reactions, and interactions that originally dominated social media timelines worldwide. The familiarity of those moments created another challenge for people attempting to completely reshape public perception because audiences already associated many viral memories from the trial with Depp himself rather than with negative headlines against him. Some creators also argued that attempts to force moral certainty onto a deeply complicated celebrity relationship ultimately backfired online. Many viewers became exhausted by black and white narratives surrounding the case. Instead, audiences gravitated toward direct evidence, first-hand footage, and nuanced discussions. Ironically, supporters believed that shift benefited Johnny Depp because they felt the broader context surrounding the case appeared more favorable to him than simplified summaries did. Whether people agreed or disagreed, the repeated return to courtroom footage kept reinforcing the same public dynamics that originally shaped online reactions during 2022. Meanwhile, entertainment industry observers noticed another important detail. Despite years of controversy, Johnny Depp still maintained enormous international fan support compared to many celebrities facing public scandals. Appearances at overseas events continued drawing major crowds. Fan interactions regularly went viral online. Supporters celebrated every reported career development as proof he remained culturally relevant despite previous attempts to sideline him professionally. Discussions about potential future projects generated intense attention online because fans viewed each opportunity as part of a larger comeback story. Critics questioned whether Hollywood would ever fully restore his former status, but supporters focused more on the fact that public enthusiasm for him clearly remained powerful years after the trial ended. Another reason the Amber Heard trend struggled involved timing. Internet culture moves extremely fast, but certain events become locked into collective memory in ways that are difficult to reverse. For millions of viewers, the Depp Heard trial became one of those events. People remembered where they were while watching testimony live streams. They remembered discussing verdict updates with friends or coworkers. They remembered seeing social media flooded with clips every day for weeks. Because the trial became such a massive shared online experience, later attempts to completely reinterpret it often collided with personal memories audiences already formed themselves. And personal memory is much harder to overwrite than ordinary headlines. Then came perhaps the biggest issue of all for the renewed anti-Depp momentum. Many viewers simply believed Johnny Depp had already paid an enormous price publicly long before the verdict ever arrived. Supporters pointed repeatedly to lost roles, damaged reputation, financial consequences, years of legal battles, and relentless media scrutiny. Even some people who were not hardcore fans argued that the scale of public humiliation surrounding the accusations had already been extraordinary regardless of individual opinions about the relationship itself. Because of that perception, attempts to restart intense public condemnation against Depp sometimes generated sympathy instead of backlash. Audiences felt they had already witnessed years of destruction play out publicly. And once sympathy enters internet discourse, it becomes very difficult to reverse emotionally. By the final stages of the renewed trend cycle, one conclusion kept appearing repeatedly across social media. The internet could debate Johnny Depp and Amber Heard forever, but every attempt to dramatically shift public opinion seemed to end the same way. People returned to the original courtroom footage. People revisited testimony. People watched full clips instead of edited snippets. And after doing that, massive numbers of viewers once again expressed support for Johnny Depp. For supporters, that pattern proved that public reaction was never based only on fandom or viral trends. They believed it came from audiences independently reviewing the evidence presented publicly during one of the most watched celebrity trials in modern history. And whether critics liked the reality or not, the latest trend showed the same thing all over again. Instead of weakening Johnny Depp's public support, the backlash reignited it on a massive scale. By the time the trend finally began slowing down, the internet had already turned the entire situation into another massive referendum on public memory, media influence, and celebrity reputation in the digital age. What shocked many observers most was not that people defended Johnny Depp again, but how fast the support wave returned once the conversation reignited. Within hours of viral posts attempting to push negative narratives about him, social media timelines became flooded with old courtroom footage, archived live streams, interview clips, and fan compilations revisiting the original trial from nearly every angle imaginable. Some users joked that the internet had practically memorized the Virginia proceedings because people immediately started referencing specific testimony days, witness statements, and even exact cross-examination moments from memory alone. That level of public familiarity is almost unheard of for celebrity legal battles, and it became one of the biggest reasons the trend backfired so dramatically. People were not responding emotionally based only on headlines anymore. They were responding based on weeks of footage they had personally watched themselves during the original trial. And once millions of viewers feel personally connected to an event through first-hand viewing, changing their minds later becomes far more difficult than simply introducing a new hashtag or viral talking point. Another huge factor involved how audiences interpreted Johnny Depp's behavior throughout the legal battle. Supporters constantly pointed out that during the televised proceedings, Depp often appeared controlled, calm, humorous, and emotionally restrained even while discussing deeply personal accusations. Clips of him interacting politely with court staff, hugging supporters outside the courthouse, or joking quietly with attorneys became iconic internet moments during 2022, and those clips resurfaced again immediately during the renewed trend cycle. Fans argued those moments shaped public perception more powerfully than many people realized because viewers tend to form emotional judgments based not only on evidence but also on demeanor. Critics argued courtroom personality should not outweigh factual analysis, but regardless of perspective, the reality remained the same. Those viral moments became deeply attached to how millions of viewers remembered the trial itself. And once the internet started replaying them again, the emotional connection many audiences felt toward Depp returned almost instantly. Another major reason the backlash intensified involved growing frustration with selective editing online. Over the years since the trial, audiences became increasingly aware of how short clips can remove context from longer conversations or testimony. During the renewed Amber Heard trend, many users immediately responded to viral anti-Depp clips by posting longer versions showing additional context before or after the moment being shared. This happened repeatedly across TikTok, X, YouTube, and Instagram. Viewers began actively warning each other not to trust short edits without checking original footage. Some commentators even argued the Depp Heard case became one of the defining examples of internet audiences learning to distrust highly edited viral content overall. Whether that interpretation was completely accurate or not, it reflected a broader shift happening online. Audiences increasingly valued primary sources over commentary, and because the original trial footage remained publicly accessible, people kept returning to it directly instead of relying entirely on influencer interpretations. Meanwhile, fan communities supporting Johnny Depp became extremely active again during the trend resurgence. Large fan accounts reposted archived interviews, behind-the-scenes film footage, charitable appearances, and career highlights spanning decades. Many supporters argued that part of the reason Depp maintained such strong public loyalty involved the sheer length of his cultural presence before the controversy. Unlike newer celebrities whose public image exists mainly through social media, Depp built his reputation across multiple generations of film audiences long before modern internet culture fully developed. Parents introduced their children to Pirates of the Caribbean. Teenagers grew up quoting Captain Jack Sparrow lines. Film fans admired performances in movies like Blow, Ed Wood, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Because of that history, millions of people already felt emotionally attached to him before the allegations became public. Supporters believed that emotional foundation played a massive role in why public sympathy returned so strongly whenever audiences revisited the trial. Another issue that complicated the renewed anti-Depp push involved contradictions inside internet discourse itself. Some viral posts framed the original public support for Depp as entirely the result of manipulation or meme culture, but many viewers strongly rejected that interpretation because they personally remembered watching lengthy testimony, expert witnesses, and legal arguments in real time. People repeatedly posted comments saying they spent hours following the proceedings daily during 2022 and did not appreciate being told their opinions came only from internet trends. This created a powerful backlash dynamic where criticism of Depp supporters sometimes strengthened their loyalty instead of weakening it. Many fans felt they were being insulted simply for believing the evidence presented publicly favored him. That emotional response became one of the strongest engines behind the renewed support surge because audiences often double down when they feel dismissed unfairly. Another major conversation centered around the role mainstream media played throughout the controversy. During the renewed trend cycle, countless users revisited old articles, television segments, and opinion pieces discussing Depp from earlier years. Supporters argued some coverage before the televised trial appeared heavily one-sided and failed to anticipate how public perception would shift once audiences saw the courtroom proceedings directly. Critics disagreed with the characterization, but the broader debate about media framing became enormous online. Commentary creators compared headlines against trial footage, discussing how narratives evolved over time as more evidence became publicly visible. Many internet users said the experience permanently changed how they consumed celebrity news because they realized how different first-hand footage could feel compared to summarized reporting. Whether people viewed that conclusion as fair or unfair, it became another reason attempts to dramatically reverse public opinion later struggled online. Then there was the simple reality of internet permanence. Unlike celebrity scandals from earlier eras, the Depp Heard case exists forever across millions of uploads, clips, streams, and archives. Every testimony day remains searchable. Every major courtroom exchange remains accessible. Every viral moment can be replayed instantly by anyone with an internet connection. That permanence fundamentally changed how the renewed trend unfolded because no one needed to rely on memory alone. Viewers could instantly revisit the exact footage being debated. Supporters of Johnny Depp believed that accessibility consistently benefited him because they felt longer context often strengthened his position compared to isolated viral claims. Critics disputed that interpretation, but even critics acknowledged how unusual the situation became once entire courtroom proceedings lived permanently online. Another reason the backlash failed to significantly damage Depp's support involved the public perception of his post-trial conduct. After the verdict, Depp largely avoided escalating internet conflict directly. Instead, much of his public visibility centered around music appearances, film festival events, art releases, directing projects, and fan interactions. Supporters argued this approach made him appear more focused on rebuilding his life and career than relitigating the controversy endlessly online. Videos of fans cheering for him at international appearances spread heavily during the renewed trend cycle, reinforcing the perception that his global support remained extremely strong despite years of controversy. Even some neutral observers admitted that few actors facing such intense public scrutiny maintained fan loyalty at that scale for so long afterward. Another fascinating element involved generational divides online. Older audiences who followed Depp's career for decades often approached the controversy differently than younger users, discovering the case mainly through social media clips. During the renewed trend, many younger viewers watched longer sections of the trial for the first time after seeing viral arguments online. Reaction channels featuring first-time viewers exploded in popularity. Some younger creators admitted they expected to dislike Depp based on social media narratives but became more conflicted after watching full testimony themselves. Others remained critical. But again, the important detail was not unanimous agreement. It was the repeated pattern of audiences turning toward original footage instead of accepting simplified summaries automatically. Every time that happened, public discussion became more complicated for those trying to create a clean narrative reversal. Another issue that fueled sympathy toward Depp involved broader public conversations about false assumptions and reputational damage. Many supporters argued the case highlighted how quickly accusations alone can reshape careers and public image before legal processes fully play out. Regardless of where individuals stood on every detail of the relationship itself, millions of viewers felt they witnessed firsthand how dramatically public narratives can shift against someone long before courtroom proceedings begin. Supporters believed that perception created lasting emotional investment in Depp's attempts to defend himself publicly. They viewed the trial not only as a celebrity dispute but as a larger example of why evidence and due process matter in public discourse. Critics challenged aspects of that framing, but the emotional impact on audiences remained undeniable. Another major factor involved the nature of internet tribalism itself. Once people publicly defend a celebrity through years of intense online debate, many become deeply emotionally committed to that position. By the time the latest Amber Heard trend appeared, Johnny Depp's online support network had already survived years of arguments, backlash, media criticism, and endless social media conflict. That history made the fanbase highly organized and extremely responsive whenever negative narratives resurfaced. Within minutes of viral anti-Depp posts appearing, supporters flooded platforms with counter-arguments, archived clips, interview references, and legal citations. Some critics described the fan response as overwhelming, while supporters viewed it as necessary defense against misinformation. Regardless of interpretation, the speed and scale of the reaction demonstrated how deeply entrenched public opinion around the case remained years later. Then came another unexpected twist. Some users who initially supported renewed sympathy campaigns for Amber Heard eventually expressed frustration with how aggressively certain online activists attacked ordinary viewers who disagreed with them. Debates became so hostile that neutral observers sometimes drifted away from the conversation entirely. In contrast, many pro-Depp creators framed their content around revisiting evidence and testimony rather than demanding ideological agreement from audiences. Supporters argued that approach felt more persuasive to undecided viewers because it encouraged people to watch and decide for yourself, rather than insisting only one interpretation was morally acceptable. Whether intentional or not, that difference in tone appeared to influence how many internet users engaged with the renewed controversy. Another important reality involved sheer audience exhaustion. By the time the trend resurfaced, many people felt they had already spent years watching the Depp-Heard conflict dominate online discussion. Some users openly admitted they were tired of being told to completely reinterpret events they remembered following closely in real time. For those viewers, revisiting the trial simply reinforced opinions they already held rather than changing them dramatically. And because the original proceedings were so extensively documented publicly, audiences often felt confident in their existing conclusions regardless of renewed online arguments. By the end of the backlash cycle, the overall pattern looked remarkably similar to what happened during previous attempts to reignite anti-Depp momentum online. Hashtags trended briefly. Arguments exploded across platforms. Commentary creators rushed to cover the controversy. But once viewers revisited the actual courtroom footage again, support for Johnny Depp surged across the internet all over again. Fan edits dominated timelines. Old testimony clips regained millions of views. Legal breakdown videos exploded in popularity. And the same conclusion kept echoing across social media repeatedly. Instead of burying Johnny Depp's public support, the renewed Amber Heard trend reminded millions of viewers why they defended him in the first place. If you followed this entire story from the beginning, then you already know why the internet still cannot stop talking about this case years later. No matter how many trends appear, people keep going back to the same courtroom footage, the same testimony, and the same public evidence that made millions support Johnny Depp in the first place. But now I want to hear your opinion. Do you think the latest Amber Heard trend completely backfired, or do you think the internet is still divided more than people realize? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, and if you want more real breakdowns without fake headlines or forced narratives, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because the next story is even bigger.